Book 1, Genesis, Chapter 3, The Skunk Works, Part 1. I saw God today. He and my new business partner drove over to my bungalow in the company car, Paul's battered Toyota pickup truck. Before their arrival, I was preparing to host a general business meeting of independent rocket systems here at our newly christened headquarters facility and welcome some members of Paul's rocket team, my new extended family. Paul had backed his Toyota into my driveway and busied himself offloading an ancient Texas Instruments personal computer, new office equipment for IRS headquarters. God lumbered up the walkway clutching a brown paper bag. He was smiling and, as one would expect of the Almighty, eminently magnanimous. "Bless you, child." I offered my right hand in greeting. "Hello, God," I said. "Long time? No smell." And God said, "A day with the Lord is as 1,000 years. Lauren Miller loved that nickname, God. He was constantly blessing people upon arrival or departure, and fond of speaking in parables or paraphrasing scripture. I never learned the story behind the supreme moniker, but suspect the characterization was originally intended as descriptive. At 420 pounds, Lauren Miller was certainly everywhere, just like the God they taught me about back in Sunday school. Lauren was currently studying for an accounting degree at a local community college, experience enough to be named IRS's chief financial officer. An ability to do something was all it took to join IRS. He had prepared every annual tax form for Paul's fledgling firm since 1991, when Independent Rocket Systems became a legal entity in order to receive a $1,500 payment for a prototype rocket motor developed for the Westinghouse Marine Division. This particular God did not dwell in heaven. Lauren Miller had rented a sofa from Paul for the last decade and earned college tuition working the graveyard shift at a 24-hour gas mini-mart where his enthusiasm for and steady diet of microwavable hamburgers maintained his awesome girth. Before squeezing into headquarters, Lauren handed me his brown paper bag and anointed the burger booty therein as personal sacrament, off limits to mere mortals such as Paul and I. "A stranger shall not eat thereof," Lauren warned, "because they are holy." Old Testament, I guessed. I put the burgers in my refrigerator and God rested, collapsing onto my sofa, support springs crying out for deliverance. I briefly met God once before, some years and several pounds earlier, when Paul was between wives and our paths crossed over a small marijuana transaction. I recall the circumstances vividly. Paul in his filthy bachelor kitchen, cooking rocket fuel over a hot stove, and Lauren nearly devoured by an adjoining living room reclining chair, watching a pornographic bestiality videotape on a 5-inch portable television. A gross tableau, yet tame compared to the image summoned in the mind's eye by what came next. "God and I had a menagerie last night with Robin," Paul had said, Lauren peering and leering at me from deep within the lazy boy's vinyl folds. "A what?" I asked. "A menagerie," Paul replied. "You know, a threesome." Robin was Paul's ex-wife. I stood up for my friend at his wedding 2 years out of high school, but shunned the alcohol-free reception, Felix McEwen's dry affair. Robin would eventually deliver stillborn twins, with the resulting emotional trauma exacerbating an existing medical condition that pushed her body weight into the massive burger-fueled realms achieved by God. Her deteriorating physical and mental condition forced Paul out of college and into a role as live-in nurse in care of his decimated wife. In the end, the strain would prove too much to bear for a young man assembling a world-class rocket team. I felt a strange mixture of horror and understanding at the idea of this trio piled naked atop a single, shuddering mattress. Paul explained Robin's obesity had rendered her sex life obsolete. "She looks like Jabba the Hutt," and I knew Paul's conception of human intimacy went beyond progressive. "To me, sex is a sport. I like to do it. I like to watch it." So I could live with this memory. I couldn't allow Paul's French to go uncorrected, though. It was ironic, his butchering the language of love, considering I first met Paul during second period high school French class. "You didn't have a menagerie," I told Paul and Lauren that bygone day. "You had a menage a trois, although technically I think you guys had a gangbang." "What are you always saying?" Paul asked himself. "Oh yeah, thank you very much, Edwin fucking Newman. What's a menagerie then?" "There's one on your little TV screen right now. Jesus Christ, is that a chicken?" Paul was on his knees now, searching headquarters walls for electrical outlets after setting up his old TI computer on my kitchen table. I recognized the system's monitor as the 5-inch portable menagerie. "Marconi was more high-tech than this," I said, shaking my head at the antiquated components. "Yeah, it's old and slow, but it works. Ted and I have designed rocket engines on this computer for years, Paul said. Ted would soon enough reveal himself as the multifaceted Ted Stevens, Paul's assistant project director, mechanical engineer, and general computer wizard. They had met in college before Robin's Jekyll and Hyde act, gravitating through the magnetic pull of a common interest in space. Paul assumed verticality and began fingering the keyboard, slowly logging into the computer's rocket design program. Ted and I have also been talking about our dilemma, he announced. What dilemma is that? I asked. About how we're going to get off this planet when the shit hits the fan. We got it wired. We'll have escape vehicles and silos within 15-minute drives of our homes. Little shuttlecraft we can fly up to the orbiting lab we'll finance when the dough starts rolling in. It sounded far too simple a plan. There had to be more details. For example, would this space laboratory be capable of just blasting off? Of course! It'll also be an interplanetary space vehicle with a big propulsion system to get us the fuck out of here. What kind of fuel are we going to use? It'll be a hybrid, solid and liquid fuel. What if we run out of gas? I worry about everything. We'll calculate that in. We'll actually have multiple modes of propulsion. The hybrid is the main propulsion, to get us out of Earth orbit. But we'll also have solar sail and solar electric ion propulsion. Solar sail is just spreading out a big sheet of material on a boom, like a sail on a ship. It catches the solar wind and pushes the vehicle. But that's not the main propulsion. See, to get out of Earth orbit, we're going to fire these big engines and basically blast our way out of orbit to get us going on our trajectory to Mars or some other destination in the solar system. Then we'll shut down the main propulsion and unfurl this solar propulsion system, which will give us extra boost we never would have gotten. Do you see what I'm saying? I hear what you're saying, I laughed. Do you see what I'm saying? It was Paul's trademark catchphrase. And it'll also maintain a G-force. That means things will tend to fall in a certain direction on the vehicle instead of just being in weightlessness. Now, we're not going to have 1G, Paul cautioned. It's going to be real easy to push off and bash our heads into the ceiling. We'll have to be careful and know what we're doing. But if you were to drop a pencil, it would slowly drift to the floor instead of just bouncing all over the cabin. See, that's the beauty of passive propulsion systems. Passive means we're getting our energy for it from the sun. It's not onboard energy. Plus, a solar sail leaves no trace of itself. There's nothing being spewed out. No exhaust? No exhaust! So, let's say an Anunnaki vessel is tracking us through our plumage as we're blasting out of orbit. Okay, they're sitting up there, calculating our trajectory. Then our engine shut down, and suddenly they don't see us anymore. There's no more heat being generated, no more fire, and our vehicle not being made from a high percentage of metallic parts, it's going to become real invisible to radar and invisible to light because it's painted black, all right? I erupted in sudden song. I want to see it painted, 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 painted black. Eat your heart out, Mick Jagger. Yeah, Paul cried. Suddenly we're going to disappear. Then we'll unfurl this black parasol that's going to boost our velocity on a perpetual basis. Any enemy ship is going to be calculating our position based on the terminal velocity of when they last saw us, when our main engines stop firing. They'll then calc out where they think we're going to be, but since we're getting this constant push from the solar wind off our plotted trajectory, we're now on a modified course that's changing, and they don't know that. So they can figure, we're going to fire a laser right over there, and it'll miss us by several hundred miles because we're not over there. We are drifting over this way, and quite stealthily. Paul waved his arms in excited illustration of our getaway under fire. Cool, I said. Fuck those 15-foot bastards. There are ways around things. We humans have gotten smart in the intervening couple of millennia, Paul said with a knowing wink and an index finger temple tap. I had one reservation. Can't they still have a turkey shoot when our main engine is lit up? They could, but they haven't done it to anything yet. The Anunnaki didn't stop us from going to the moon. That's why, if we build it stealthily, they might not realize what's really happening. They're watching so much on this planet, and we won't be the only people flying spaceships. America launches a shuttle every couple months. Russia and China's firing shit. France with Ariane is always launching. They're watching lots of hardware coming up out of the atmosphere all the time. If we keep this real low-key and nonchalant, they may not think it's anything more than an unmanned interplanetary probe. Especially if we take off going nowhere in particular. Do you see what I'm saying? Like the Russian Phobos probes to Mars? It was real obvious they were going to Mars. What you do instead is take a roundabout sort of way in which you're in no hurry to get to wherever, even though it's your ultimate destination. You get yourself lost in the expanse of the solar system for a while. And if you lose yourself like that, they'll probably just forget about you. They wouldn't come after us? I think they've got too much going on just monitoring Earth. It's like watching an ant colony. You may have an overall picture of what the whole colony is doing, but to focus on one specific individual and say, wow, this one's getting away, I don't think they'd come after us. No. It just seems like if it happens right in front of them, us bombing through the atmosphere, hanging onto our pencils, how could they miss us? It's not happening right in front of them. It's happening sort of in front of their lookouts, the little gray fuckers in their flying saucers. We gotta make this look real inconspicuous. We gotta consider timing, keep it under wraps. We don't want people talking about it here on Earth. We're talking about it right now. You and me are nobody. When they start talking about this in the halls of the White House, that's when it's time to worry. I'm not worried about that right now. I only talk about this with you, Ted, and Lauren. I don't even talk about this with friends at work because they all think I'm a loon. I could relate. I was approaching loon status at warp speed around Acorn Engineering, wandering the factories and offices and responding to my coworkers' what's new inquiries with our escape scheme, develop a cheap propulsion system to tap into the megabuck satellite launch industry and use the profits to build a 21st century Mayflower. What happens when we start making it big? I asked Paul. When we make it big, we're going to tell people we launch satellites into geosynchronous orbits. Arion's doing it and nobody's killed them. Can I put this in my book? I hadn't told Paul I was chronicling our effort. I felt it important, for some reason, to record it all. I knew I was living in 1994 America, where 1 in every 4 adults I saw on the street were functionally illiterate. Yet still there existed a desire to create a true account of our struggle, if not for the fools on every street corner, then perhaps for their children. Consider it my newest testament for posterity's sake. Put what in what book? What you just told me, that we're going to build an intergalactic space vehicle? Oh no, Paul was clearly taken aback. I don't want you telling anybody that. No, that would blow the lid off the whole thing. I don't think I like this too much. I'm getting a headache just thinking about piloting a shuttlecraft out of a silo. I don't like it either, Paul commiserated. I would much rather have it that the Anunnaki never existed, and we did claw our way up to this point of evolution all on our own. It would actually make things much easier to deal with. Do you see what I'm saying? For 500,000 years, we have been the butt of a big fucking joke, and it pisses me off. We have been led to believe that we are miserable, sinful, worthless creatures when they are the ones who are the fucking culprits. The Anunnaki have made us miserable, depraved creatures, and then society tells us, shame on you for being that way.